Good viewer, you are watching Xirtus. This is because Xirtus makes you feel good, makes you feel fulfilled. You are enjoying this. You will continue to watch Xirtus for a long time to come. You want to subscribe to Xirtus, and you will. You will like and subscribe and share. You will tell your friends. Tell your friends about Xirtus. Your friends will come to like Xirtus, much as you are liking this right now, as we speak. Thank you for subscribing to Xirtus. See, that was easy.
So long as I'm in this Oval Office.
Oh, hey. How's it going? Welcome to the show.
Hey.
So, Stefan's here. Do you want to hear a song I made earlier?
Yeah, let's do it. When's it going to premiere on Normal World?
That's what I should tell him and see about that. We should get that going.
You said you were going to start a band called Elections in Arizona, right?
Right? That's what we should do.
I'm down.
That's the way to do it.
I can sing worth half a Dickens or something.
Dude, it could be... Who is half a Dickens? Anyway, if you've been to the Spotify, I've been putting up like new songs, New World Order Baby, which is pretty great, and then Cyber Gulag is Paradise, Omega Point, So Meta, right? This one's so meta. I feel like you're like gonna get like a guitar solo next.
I mean, some of the best EDM songs are just the beat in one phrase that happens to drop at just the right time. And the right way.
Now it's you know who I possess the you know what I place it you know where I know it's why that does not care. Now it's you know who I possess the you know what I place it you know where I know it's why that does not care. Now it's you know who I possess the you know
yeah, I'm all about that mantric, repetitive.
For the innovation so fresh, stand and confess that tomorrow is but a fanciful mesh. This is the innovation, stand and acknowledge. Understand we not dead. Wish we had this is the innovation, stand and acknowledge.
Feel the lyrics is that who's singing?
AI, bro.
Yeah,
that's all AI, bro.
I mean,
yeah.
I would almost be disappointed if it wasn't.
Yeah. I like it. I like what you can do with AI. I think it's going to be really interesting. I want to reach out to like anybody who I hadn't talked to in a while who makes music and knows the names of obscure genres, right? Because the real thing is, if it's trained on all of this music history, it's trained on obscure genres. So you just have to look up by the genre and understand what genres you want to like train on. So you can train on 60s music, you can train on progressive hardcore, you can train on pop music, you can train on industrial hyper pop, new metal. You know, I think that's really interesting that you're able to it's a kind of DJI, right? Because you're DJing with like nano samples.
Yeah. I mean, it took a long time to get a good jam band. Was the Wailers, who were Bob Marley's kind of group, were known for when they played in a room together. There was a certain type of resonance and synchronicity that they would.
Have you seen that documentary? There's actually a film about that. I think it's made in the 70s. Because they filmed it when they recorded it, or about it, essentially, because they didn't have the technology to have all of the parts at the time, so they had to have all of the track recorded at the same time, essentially, which is crazy to do. I mean, you couldn't do that today for the most part.
And instead of filtering out this guitar from this microphone because it's closer to this one, instead their music sounded better when you kept the echoes in, because they were kind of conscious of that. And it started with them playing a more fast-paced punk-style rock steady, and then because they got kind of proficient musically at that higher pace, and then they kind of skanked it out a little bit, so to speak, with reggae and slowed it down.
Dub roots dance hall, bro. The dub journeys. Like, I love the feedback loops, right, in dub music. It's really interesting that they integrated spirituality, like the Rastafarian music, Rastafarian religion, and technology, access to synthesizers and these microphone systems. And I don't know if you've experienced that. I'm sure you have, right? Like, it's just a crazier thing than reggae or anything is dub, especially like the early dub roots. That I think it's also
I
probably
see it all
more
as a bridge back to roots reggae, but it's like transhumanism. It's like when a lot of other things are out there to get you interested in it, and then to get you into the main feed. So dub isn't my favorite kind of reggae, but it is still in that genre. And then their playlists will expand to include some of the, as you said, the more like religious or quasi-religious, spiritual.
It's interesting. It becomes an ambient kind of feedback loop thing. But yeah, what is your favorite kind of reggae? I mean, just before I say, because there's ska and there's reggae, I don't know if really it's fair to say one of them came first, right? Like fast and slow isn't the only definition either. But what would you say about
I mean, it's something that I studied a long, long time ago in the liner notes when those used to exist, and it seems like rocksteady and ska were slight precursors to the full-on reggae drop beat. But there's a subgenre called roots reggae, and if you look that up, you'll find the person who actually invented the word reggae.
Even with moderate search, got some shorty shorts. Maybe I shouldn't be in the images. I should be going to Roots Reggae Wiki. Subgenre deals with the everyday lives and aspirations of Africans and those in the African diaspora. But yeah, it's not really. This is more ideological.
Then
it's not really
thinking about political strife and local community concerns and how they intersect, you kind of get this microcosm of a series of political waves coming in over an enclosed island space, and by observing those patterns and rhythms, they're able to see through some of the trickery that's usually pulled. And they boil it down to say, it's paying the poor people to kill other poor people, and essentially that's what politics is, or that's what warfare is.
Yeah. So I agree, but and also Travis just gifted another membership, which is the secret to eternal life. Thank you. I don't know, that's not medical advice, but I appreciate it. That's pretty based. And whoever became a member, go check out all the now unlocked Too Hot for TV content from Xirtus. And but when you look at reggae, I also have to think about ska. And it's interesting because so much of what we believe to be the origins of reggae and ska is that the modulation from AM shortwave radio, when they're listening across the delta and bayous, the bouncing signal from the rock and roll and blues that they're listening to from Louisiana and all this, it eventually gets there, but you're hearing part of it, and it's fading in and out,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
changing so I think it creates
They even
two
say
kinds
that's
of,
reminiscent of the shortwave radio buffering up against the coastline and weather patterns, and that some of the drop beat almost mimics. It creates that sense of expectation, and it's a drumming pattern that wasn't really utilized in widespread music until reggae identified it specifically as something that opened up the mind to kind of certain possibilities, perhaps.
right. And so from there, you've got people that are educated musicians, and they start learning it in ska. I think comes from that, because ska is really, if you're clever and you're able to play your instruments and you figure out what's going on, you're reading music, then ska comes out of that. And reggae was, I think, more intuitive, and it's about the feeling, but it's also became complex because you had ska musicians that became reggae musicians. But
Yeah.
would you say that's correct, or do you think I'm exaggerating?
Yeah, no, I think there were obviously some purists and people who preferred one over the other, but with the kind of historical retrospective, it's just about appreciating the variations. Whereas I'm sure if I were alive in the 70s, I might have maybe opinions about whose music usurped whose when and why. And yeah, I think, I don't remember the name of the book, but something about punk culture in Britain in the 70s. And the worst thing that can happen to a movement that's a counterculture movement is to be embraced by culture. And as soon as that happens, everyone's out there walking around with these tattoos and funny hair as a sign of rebellion. And now, but wait, what happened? Now this is being embraced as mainstream, and it can really throw the movement for quite a,
Absolutely.
And-
yeah,
and-
because never judge a book by its cover. Things are not as they seem, right?
Yeah.
But that's what makes reggae. That's what's kind of, and this is an amazing meta joke that we're talking this long, two white guys, one in a suit, about reggae. But just even thinking about what turned reggae into dub music, because dub music is essentially one of the earliest forms of techno. Because you've got samizdat in the Soviet Union, where they're taking tapes and they're trying to copy tapes to tapes to tapes to copies to. They have a vinyl record they don't have vinyl, so they're using an X-ray of a lung and they're copying a record out of it. So if you've ever seen Russian, if you get far enough east, you'll find that people have, if their parents are cool, records that have been copied onto X-rays. Wow. And the music has become distorted, clearly, after several times. Sometimes it's recorded from a recording to a record, especially when cassette tapes became a factor of listening from one microphone to another speaker. Yeah. So it wasn't even really like a line, a positive line out. So this kind of music became analog. Right. And African diaspora, right? They have all this music that already exists, but they're listening now to this distortion already of something that they don't necessarily understand. So it creates this new interest in this thing, which is the distortion itself. So dub becomes, in like the 1960s, really important, because you've got tapes that are playing at different speeds, tape loops, and you have access to sound equipment that's making these feedback loops. And those feedback loops, they make you feel disoriented at very least, right?
Sure.
So it's a really religious experience.
Now, like some of the reggae music, especially roots, was designed kind of on a sound level, an acoustic level, to be listened to on shitty little hand radios. Excuse me, pardon my French.
Right.
And so you could appreciate the song and the lyrics and the melody without the bass line. And then as soon as you plug it into a real stereo and hear it with the bass line, it's a whole nother song almost, and a whole nother experience of wanting to move with the music instead of being transfixed by these kind of tinny noises that your brain's trying to decipher, and that are making sense at a certain rate and speed and in a certain way that feels positive, as opposed to the messages in roots reggae music oftentimes stray away from the negative things. I think Bob Marley was famous for saying, me no have to write love songs, but he chose to, and he could have gone a lot more militant and started a lot more social upheaval with the message in his music, and he decided love songs are probably the way to go.
Right. Love songs are interesting because everything is kind of relatable to an extent to love on some level. but it depends. That's a fascinating tool that you found. I like that. Very classy.
It's actually a car antenna.
That's
I mean, it was modeled after one. It's not actually a car antenna.
pretty based, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's really.
I was gonna get it installed as a tip of my finger, so I could just like
transhumanism. Yeah.
Go gadget. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're gonna be phobic about that stuff. The Roko's basilisk that says that. Might as well buy in now, right?
Well, so they asked. So I did the United States Transhumanist Party I did a kind of salon, they call it, kind of talk, and so one of the questions was about whom best to integrate with as groups and factions and demographics that the transhumanists could ally with, and like one of the things I was thinking is anybody who uses a tool to survive. As a transhumanist. So if for any reason you think tools make your life better, if you're using a hammer, then, if you're in a union, so unions should be really for hammers. If they think humans should be using tools, then they're essentially transhumanists. NRA, if they like using guns, that they're not eagles or bears anymore. Like they're a different kind of hunter. They're transhumanists. And so it becomes really difficult to find anybody who's not actually a technologist. Right. And I think that's really
even the people who deny. Well, you hear Alex Jones rail against transhumanism, and there he is sitting at the pulpit of a technothrone.
Right. Yeah, it's
that
kind
is
of ironic.
Inherently extending his existence beyond his mortal self, and will likely throughout time. I think it becomes.
Well, thank God he brings up the point, though, right? Because I think it's bringing everyone's like wondering about what it means then, and so then we're able to actually supply consequentialist answers about if you do this, this happens. Historically, transhumanism, which has existed for thousands of years at least, as long as there has been humans, there's been transhumanism, right? So humans trying to take aspirin it comes from humans taking willow bark, right? It's if as far back as you want to go, humans are always picking up tools and extending beyond the human condition from the way we saw it yesterday to what we think it can be tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, there's the fear, I think, comes in, and the moral quandary comes in when thinking about it on a personal level. From a philosophical standpoint, it's an interesting space to play into, and especially the technology that's becoming available to the average person, the manifestation of that transhumanist streak, people could cater it to their own liking, so to speak. But the fear is, you walk into a room with 10 brains and they're all hooked up to computers, and are they just trapped in a loop of infinite suffering while the output says, I'm happy. That's kind of the dystopian manifestation of the transhumanist model.
I think people need to really think about consequentialism more, because a lot of things are done based on what the outcome will be, instead of what their intentions are, whether they think it's right or wrong. It's about what the consequences will be. So if you took a bunch of brains and you plug them all in to make them experience suffering, I think there would be a finite amount of data that could be accumulated from that process. So it's unlikely for something like that to persevere indefinitely.
Is that a place where AI could actually be a safeguard against those things? Because AI is not that curious about human suffering. It would probably be a human that would program in some sort of infinite suffering loop. Whereas why would that be interesting to a...
Right. And simultaneously, there are ways that AI can accumulate that data in a better way, right? So for instance, the thing that people are most afraid of, I think, is the next issue that will evolve from this is the solution, which is data and sensorial informatic data. So if you have bioinformatic systems that are graphene tattoos or nanobots in your blood, immediately people are like, whoa, stop. It freaks them out. They don't want to really...
Luciferase and, yeah.
They don't like the idea. But at the end of the day, something that can measure all of the things going on in your blood and know all of your promoter sequences that are turning on and turning off all day long will reduce it will produce preventative medicine and preventative medicine is fundamentally better than prescriptive treating a disease later after something's
Well,
happened.
when they're rounding up children in third world countries and giving them vaccines, outside of the social division that may or may not cause, this idea of a luciferase tattoo means that they won't get an extra dose by accident. Or, if they move, they all of a sudden staying with a different family, that NGO shifts their focus to a different region, and now they're getting 30% of the same children, though, that are moving back and forth between these communities. They're getting rounded up again, and because there's no central ID system, or they're choosing to not
let's
do
make
that.
let's make it scarier. So if you were to use the nanobot solution, now all of a sudden you don't need medicine almost ever again, right? You don't need vaccines or anything, because you just fly over that and you turn on the system firmware update,
Yeah.
right? So I find that to be also a solution that isn't really a problem, except for the fact that we need such sorts of encryption in the world that we live in now. And these sorts of encryption exist and are needed because other people have those sorts of encryption, right? If people can keep secrets, then knowledge and information and intelligence can be in the hands of a few, which can be very powerful. This is something that's very interesting to me about Q-Star, or even further out, like quantum computers, this idea that we'll be able to remove encryption. We'll be able to decrypt anything will be decryptable. So there will not be secrets. It will be impossible to have a secret, to have privacy will be gone, right? And if everyone's identity is associated with privacy, okay, but if our identity is associated with our choices and our actions, and so we have to see how far that goes, because we keep thinking then that it would be, okay, there's an elite still, right? There's still a group of people that have privacy. No, like if AI and quantum computers are that powerful and that system becomes available in a parity where there's not just one of them, but there's several of them, and they start competing with each other, immediately your elite lose their privacy as well. So if that's the case, I mean, do we end up in kind of this witch hunt Nazi Germany situation where Immanuel Kant is being asked, are there Jews in my basement? And I have to tell them, get off my porch. Or are we going to end up in a future where, because we see the evils that are being done, light can be shined upon it and it can be stopped, right? And I think that might also be... That might be something that people forget about a system like this, is that with so many people watching, I mean, the democratization of it's only weaponized because of misinformation. People are hyper emotional because of misinformation. If you had more data, I'd still like to believe people would be able to make different that they would make different choices with that data.
Yep. I think, but so you might as well, I think for society's sake, right, just you announce that quantum computing does exist, that you figured it out, and that, what is it, it's Big Brother has everybody's password, and then it's the perception of the panopticon. And my personal kind of philosophical stance on quantum computing and nanobots is that the quantum computing thing will never exist. I think you can reach the same destination of having no safe passwords in a different way and call it quantum computing, and have that be the explanation as to why there are no nothing's encrypted. But like nanobots, we have nanobots in our blood, and they're called antibodies, and we make them out of our white blood cells. And I don't know that you can really get any better than that or hope to replicate something. It was a mouse pus or something with the, there was this infusion, was that remdesivir or something like that, where the equivalent of injecting nanobots is just in injecting white blood cells.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you said it that way. Actually, I think that's actually a really useful metaphor. The problem that people have when they hear the term nanobots, and that's even why it has a colloquial stigma, and it shouldn't be called that. It should be called new blood or true blood or something, with a even less, a more vampiristic stigma. No, the titanium instead of iron is, I think, one of the goals that was set out maybe 20 some odd years ago. Create white blood cells out of titanium instead of iron, because then the oxygen can be stored far longer. And as this goes, we would be able to have more oxygen because you'd be able to have surface area volume that's stored if you're able to create system like this. Could be far more intricate.
That's why octopi have copper blood. And
Right.
And there was some diagram, I think it was a couple streams ago, where there was some circular sigil pattern with an octopus with 10 arms streaking out, and then something spiraling in the center. And
Usually
there are little tabletop
squid have
physics
the two.
demonstrations or electro demonstrations that will create a little plasma ring. And the reason that it would be symbolized by an octopus with these wires coiled around everything is perhaps in certain times and spaces, the only way that they would know that they had copper is because of the blood of a bunch of octopi.
Interesting.
And then you distill that down. Same way someone could forge a sword out of the blood of their enemies if they got enough of their blood.
That is really, really good.
And they might have been able to isolate copper in other ways too. But one way to make sure that you're working with a known variable and then making a wire out of it somehow. And,
dude, that's a
500 years ago, if especially it was like a gilded manuscript. So someone drew the outline, someone else colored it in, and then someone went to added gold foil either to hide something or to highlight something. And who knows? What are we looking at here?
Sorry, I'm just checking this out. The Chalcolithic era. The Chalcolithic era is the Copper age, or the Eneolithic era. But the Chalcolithic is what they say in school. Basically, it's interesting because it happens before the Bronze Age. Okay, so bronze is pretty easy to work with. Okay, and this is one of those things where you should know that as a kid. I got the wrong. Sorry. As a kid, you should know that the that the Bronze Age.
That's clearly a microphone, but go ahead. Yeah. Anyways,
what, this thing that we're staring at, the picture, the chair, or the?
There's all types of things that there are these flat things that are created, and then if you even just accidentally decorating them with other types of wire, you would create something that would function as a microphone.
Well, you've seen this. This is the this is one of the cuneiform copper plates, and it's very interesting that there's a copper plate because copper is more difficult to work with, and this is not bronze, right? The bronze is something that is actually far easier to work with. So the fact that the Copper Age came first is always really fascinating, and suggests that there is some sort of advanced civilization early on that led to.
When it comes to copper scrolls, I think the Dead Sea Scrolls, some of them might have been on copper. It shows that not a lot of wisdom from the civilization. It might have been. It shows it's almost like matzah. You had to make it in a rush because you couldn't get the alloy right, because clearly it is going to degrade over time under certain conditions. But if you store copper scrolls in a type of sour wine and keep an electrical current hooked up to it, it essentially keeps the surface of the copper clean. And there was a time, might have been in Gothenburg, where you could get, it was during a time of depression, and one of the things that you could do is scrape copper and get vermilion, maybe is the type of green pigment, and the church wanted it. So for some reason, everyone had these clay pots of copper scrolls in their basement that were full of wine, and maybe the electricity might have gotten hooked up to them or not hooked up to them. So eventually they corrode, and it just looks like a chunk of corroded copper, which to some people is an asset, is a pigment that they can use. But one wonders if it was part of a campaign of purposefully erasing certain types of scrollage.
Yeah, it's interesting looking at some of the mineral composites that they like to use to make the paint too, because these amazing colors are all made from such amazing minerals, that they would be choosing cinnabar, mercury ore, to make these paintings. But yeah, the idea of copper blood is really interesting to me. And yeah, other species do have different kinds of blood, but copper tends to be the one that we see. You could do titanium, and the difference that would make would be huge, because first off, if you're able to hold oxygen if you hold your breath for weeks, that's the difference. Let's say your heart stops and you call 911. No, let's do it again. Let's say your heart stops while you're asleep. And so you wake up in the morning and you notice your watch says your heart stopped. And you're like, oh. So you go to work, you come home, you forget about it. The next day, is the party. You go to a party, and then Sunday you text your doctor like, I need to come in on Monday probably, because like my blood, it's not my heart stopped.
You're saying you're walking around, you're noticing it's still not beating.
You're
just getting Jump as
Right.
long as you get a jump start
The
within
longest breath you've ever taken. You'd be able to hold your breath for weeks. And then the doctor says, "Oh, we're busy Monday. Can you come in next week on Friday? A week from Friday." And you're like, I'm busy that Friday. How about the next Monday? And they're like, yeah, that'll work. And you come in then, and then they do your blood. That's how long you'd be able to hold your breath. So
Right.
it's really important to understand why, changing your blood from iron would be really a benefit and not necessarily that inorganic, because like we're saying,
Well, would you
we're
say
literally
there's a
just making blood.
similarity between the way that RFK Jr. sounds when he speaks and Christopher Reeves?
For sure, yeah.
But he admits that he used to be addicted to smoking crack or other substances. And if you totally burn the inside of your lungs, and you're found by paramedics, they have this, it's like the stuff from the movie The Abyss that they put the mouse in and it was still able to breathe. If you pump that into your system, it can cause a gradient. So you get your oxygen every like 2 hours. Again, I'm not saying this is known science or anything I've researched, but we were talking about Dick Cheney's worrying heart, in previous episodes. So this is just along the same lines.
God forbid
You might
this was
not
all Dick
need to
Cheney we
breathe.
were talking about.
So if you have certain bypass systems in and you're getting oxygenated blood every 30 minutes or every hour because your lungs never really fully healed, or
if you have a new organ that's produced that can chemically turn oxygen out of liquids, like from the gut or something like that. There's so many
I thought
ways
that's
that
what was going to happen to Andrew Tate, because when he was in prison, they diagnosed him with lung cancer, and thankfully, it doesn't seem to have been a case that took him down. But I thought and that's one way you can cut out someone's tongue, you could sew their lips shut. But if you just like take their lungs, but then it's a gift to humanity in a different way, because now we know that technology exists. Whereas who else?
Well, there's plenty of people who've woken up with.
Not that I think his tongue should be cut out. Not at all. I'm just saying that
biblically speaking,
it was one of the things that crossed my mind. It was like, really, lung cancer as soon as he gets in prison. So, okay. It's like Roger Stone's wife and Ron DeSantis' wife, and things that if you look into it, it's like 1 week diagnosed with stage 4, terrible, this, that, and the other, and then 3 weeks later, it's like all clear.
I'm remembering eating pig tongue sliced in Argentina in the Chinese barrio chino with chicken feet. Now, thank you for that recalled memory. With transhumanism, though, this idea that we're going to make things that are that different, I think we're being very careful to make it a biomimicry based system. So it's true, we should stop referring to them necessarily as tech ideas like nanobots. We should be looking at this more like we're going to modify and maybe you could say hack biomechanical processes and just replace certain aspects of them with maybe slightly more durable aspects. I think that's cool. And I wonder, though, because you have to wonder, like, people in the 19th century, the 20th century, the other show we talked a few weeks or days ago, I forget, about Californian eugenics and how people who'd been really all about, it was Thomas talking about how California eugenics had started as they'd wanted to, we can't cure being deaf or blind, but maybe we can isolate the gene and stop that from reproducing, right? And so then so from this idea, like, spread kind of a control of gene and a genocide.
That's controlling it from one end, where you're looking to promote the deletion of quote unquote deleterious genetic anomalies. But was Ali G, when he got in charge of the country, he just only fit women. Those are the only ones who were allowed in, and that was his only real measure of.
We are live, Chris. Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's kind of a situation where it doesn't matter because even if people are, I mean, at first, sure, it'll be things that people consider to be disabilities, right? But ableism's more real than people like to admit, and aesthetic matters. So it gets to a point where people will start to nitpick that we should all be very similar. If people are already naming their kids Brittany and Jason, every year, or Jennifer and Chris every year, or something like that. Imagine if they could choose to have the same face every year, or have the same genes for this or that. I think that's the kind of, it's a good thing, but it's a bad thing, because we might lose diversity of phenomenon of experience if people try too hard to become what they consider to be the aggregate of the human.
Well, for a while
best.
there, if someone was cloning humans and going into the Capuchin crypts and digging out the saints and digging out previous emperors, or the idea of finding remains on a battlefield, and it's your job to resurrect through cloning everyone that died for a certain cause or something like that. It became a self-defeating cause, though. Eventually, if you're going to the pharaohs in Egypt, who were kind of inbred to some extent where eventually you're not, by going into the sarcophagus of the king of kings or of the holiest person at that time, you weren't necessarily getting 6'8" Sumerian king. You were getting some offshoot of some line that had been preserved and interwoven.
Right. But what do we find about, we've talked about, the corn before, right? This idea that if you inbreed corn, so they took a bag over the corn, and then it breeds itself, and they do this, it gets smaller, and they do this, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller for 7 generations or so, until they get to a corn that's so small it won't get any smaller. And they do this with another line of corn. They inbreed another line of corn. So once they get them down to their most refined states, then they cross those 2 inbred corn to get this new hybrid corn, which is larger than either of the other corn started at before their inbreeding process. Okay. So I feel like there might be something about royalty that we misunderstand, like the original intentions for.
And Rosicrucianism, the idea of crossing roses, and what you can have the most beautiful rose that doesn't smell like anything, and then you can have kind of a very plain looking, almost like it's like a weed rose, but it smells like a tea rose. It smells like perfume, and vice versa. And it's not by accident. Sometimes they have big thorns, sometimes they have small thorns, and to the average person who's just planting and living in their kind of their narrow slice of the space-time continuum, right? Broccoli exists, and all these other things, but really those are the product of very careful cultivation by humankind, or actually, I assume by humankind.
Right. Yeah. We have to wonder. So you also did have some things you wanted to present. Sure. If you want to pull anything up, that is.
Yeah. Well, just to one thread back. I mean, if you want to do share screen, I've got one.
Yeah. Where's your screen? I don't see it share.
But I was just looking up the origin of the word sonnet. Let's see, share screen. Oh no! This is your meta.
While I wait for you to get your screen up, I'll just.
Nice. You freaked me out.
I'll check out the comments too.
So I think I'm attempting to share my screen. Is it not working?
I don't see it. No.
Let's try one more time.
I'll try to share more of these members onlys. Anybody who's a member is the base. Make America green again. I like it. I like that name. Make America green again. I'm a fan. That's so meta. That's so meta.
There you go. Increasing the listenability of the conversation. That works.
I don't make me loop it again. Where are you at? Did you not find the thing? It's still not up?
It says you will not be able to. If this quits me out of Google.
I think he has to restart his app with permissions. Is that what's gonna happen? So he'll probably just come back. Well, I could do another one. Let me see here. I'll add another thing. You can check this out. What's another thing that you guys would like? This one's pretty good. Okay. It's a little intense, but this was fun. This one's the New World Order Baby song, which is available on SoundCloud.
I am the product and the sum of the Agenda 21. Order, baby. I am the monarch from the meeting of KGB CIA. I find work to be distracting from the games I like to play. New world order, baby. New world order, baby. New world order, baby. New world order. Or your heart was on your sleeve. I hold your heart now in my hand. I drip blood upon the soil, that it may fertilize the land. I use force to hold the peace. My tight grip shall not release. From the soils of my spoils, from the dowry of your niece.
Oh, I think he's here.
You can sulk and you can frown. You can turn the music down, but you can't escape the drumming of the rhythm of the beat.
Oh, he's getting up to
New world order,
Order,
baby.
baby. New World Order, baby.
Yeah, I guess I clicked the wrong button, but
That's cool.
so just as far as scanning through thousands of images as part of a daily practice of trying to make myself go blind at a young age, every now and then just something kind of jumps out and you're going, hey, wait a minute, what's that supposed to be? And if you look here on the table, it's almost like they want, there's a break in the perspective there. There's a guy standing on a table. It's either a very large table or, but then what's at his feet? And the question is, how miniature could it be? And to me, that kind of looks like a Palm Pilot.
Let me zoom
Or
in here a
calculator.
bit. Can you zoom in or what? Yeah, that's kind of.
And yeah, I do have another image of it as well.
So it's like it looks like it's got buttons.
Yeah. And when you see things like this on an engraving, there are other types of allusions to technology that may or may not exist. But every now and then it's like, where's Waldo? And you're going, And I mean, maybe it's a question mark. I mean, I don't know, but nothing too profound, I guess.
Have they said what they think it is? Like, is it coins or something? What do they say it is?
Let me, if I can open the, let's see, open recent screenshot. Funny. There we go. So it says it is Dr. Comicus. Who is this guy? And who knows? I mean, Alamy is a place that compiles images that, you know, this might be similar to what you're looking for. And so he's selling his pills. That's what that is. It's a
Gotcha. Okay.
right. And that's not an LCD screen that's cracked or I don't know. One of the very first things that radio transmission would have been used for would have been, I would imagine, the medical industry. And like, how else do you think the three kings got called to the virgin birth? So
yeah, it's not
may have
quite
been-
pareidolia, but what is that called? Where you have, you know, something that is you can connect it to. You have, you know, it's a different meaning, not necessarily. I guess
I'm calling
pareidolia
it
might
kind of cultural residue. It's something I heard. I don't remember who specifically said that. But then when you look at something like this and you're going, yeah, that really looks like a V8, or is it a V12? You know, and it was the Indian motorcycle that was famous. Okay. And
Guess it's
again,
a
Indian
V6.
and ancient Rome might have been the same thing, depending on which way you want to slice it.
I think a lot of the time we like to call a lot of things Rome. It bothers me as a Croatian. I have to live with that.
I was listening to Lex Friedman, and he had someone on. It was an elder gentleman, but he was anytime he referred to World War II, instead of saying gypsies, he said Romans.
Brilliant. I like it. He's not.
And it
wrong,
wasn't
bro.
that he mistakenly said that; he would say it as though that's what he believed they were, and it's what he called them. And
There's some evidence to that logic, right? Because during the Crusades and the Dark Ages, and most of these times post-Roman period, the Gypsies or the Romans were called that. They were called Romans, and they were soldiers that kept the peace because they were not part of the Jewish or the Christian or the Muslim or they weren't part of that Abrahamic fight, so they ended up being pretty useful because they would be, and so there were Saint Black John or something like that, Saint Black John or Gypsy King. Like there's all these different names for Saint, Gypsy, this and that. But a lot of it came down to the fact that they kept the peace and order in circumstances where there was just a lot of fighting going on between different religious groups, which, religious groups at that time were political groups, right? So it's important to remember that because I like that line that when people say, God, people have killed more people in the name of God and blah, blah, blah. And actually, communism has killed more people than all religions ever combined in
maybe
only
by accident.
one century, and not even trying, which is actually more impressive. So, I mean, realistically looking back, like how much of religion was really political? I mean, Luther, Calvin, most of these circumstances really come down to politics.
In a truly organized communist system, there's going to be an entity that hunts out the people on Social Security and eliminates them so that the young people have more money. Is that kind of the idea?
No, I think that another issue that
culling effect because the bank account isn't big enough. And
no, see, that's the issue. We have this weird idea about scarcity, and so this is a thing. This is okay. So fundamentally, like what I believe, why I think.
I believe you said the problem with communism when it's manifested into a powerful government form.
Oh, but it could be good.
That manifest that false scarcity.
It shouldn't though.
Or,
see, here's
or
the thing.
Conquest
so
instead of generating.
To be like what's the word? To be prudent. Like we shouldn't have used the word communism because in the pursuit of God, in the pursuit of communism, right? It's the same idea. Communism has never been, like the Soviet Union never said they became a communist country. They said they were in the pursuit of becoming a communist country. People don't understand that. So it was never something that was fully established or something they had achieved. And they looked at themselves as a state capitalist, and they said, okay, well, this is, how we're going to run our state. Our state's going to have kind of corporate social responsibility, of state social responsibility, and they were working toward. And there were a lot of failures, but I think people really they underestimate how fantastic the Soviet Union actually was in certain circumstances. It really is impressive and a marvelous accomplishment in certain circumstances. I know it's like, what? No way!
I came up with a very interesting think about the Soviet Union. So before we totally shift off to this, we'll come back to the idea of Romans and Bedouins. Have you heard of the concept of Bedouins?
Right. Well, I know the people, the Bedouins.
Well, and when you look it up, it's like they always have existed pretty much. Like before recorded time, they were the people that were just in between all of the really tightly controlled areas. And there's very hard to put a finger on what they are. So the Romans kind of probably were the Bedouins. And
well, have they done genetic? I'm sure they've done some haplotypes, right? What do they know? No.
But oftentimes
Bedouin.
they.
Oh, they probably don't have
them because
they probably don't have like a distinct haplotype if they travel all the time. I could be wrong, but
right. When you're talking about that span of time,
they are Semitic.
They trace them all the way back to 5000 BC.
Yeah, I think the Bedouins are more likely they're a Semitic people, so they're likely connected to like the Jews, the Palestinians, the Egyptians.
It's just as far as a people, I hear very little about them and what they were and how they managed to persist for so darn long.
Bedouins are super based, right? Like if you ever meet
everyone else came and went and rose and fell, and they've just existed.
Well, I think that's because they were able to live in the desert, and probably lived in the desert before it was a desert. They're probably the survivors of when the desert was far greener, and so there's a reason why they still live there and have like a heritage. But they've followed this nomadic path of saying, okay, well, you can live in this part of the world at this time of year, but you must go, and you must go to this other part of the world.
Any technology or artifacts that they have were probably ferreted away from one of these centers of trade or this. And then eventually
Kazam, is that the movie? Kazam, where they meet the Bedouins? That's right.
The city centers would know that they get conquered, and then they would rely on the Bedouins to maintain kind of a backup of their technology system, so that if the capital ever fell, they could go out to these families and kind of recuperate what was lost, maybe.
Dude, Kazam's actually about this, which is kind of a trip, right? Because like the bizarre, yeah. Have you remember Kazam? It's like it's the
okay. That's so deep though that something I'm talking about immediately made you. Oh, Kazam.
Well, it sucks because as you know, like there was that movie Shazam, which was way better, you know.
The Mandela affected one. With,
that's what they say, you know. But obviously, like the real messed up thing about it is that I was the kid in this movie. But anyway, so no, but Kazam though, they're really.
I don't doubt much of what you say. Every now and then you're like, oh, and then I know Oliver Tree because my younger brother. It's like, oh, of course you do. Of course you know people like that. It's awesome.
He's a gentleman and a scholar. But so with Kazam, the kid wasn't as cute as me, but more importantly, he does find the genie from the bazaar, and the genie originally was lost in the bazaar, and they're selling things in the bazaar, like there's stereos and everything else, and it's just magical, the kinds of things that you find in a Bedouin bazaar, right? Because it's the ultimate exchange, and you can maybe... Oh, sorry, wrong button. You can maybe consider it like in Star Wars, where like the Jawas are taking parts of ships and everything else. Star Wars is super racist, by the way. I don't know how Star Wars isn't canceled for being super racist. I love it, and I don't want it to be. But
or is it speciesist? It's representing racism through speciesism.
It's representing racism through speciesism, but it's also it's emulating, and it's a parody of like World War I movies, like these kinds of like African colonial movies, like that you what's the one, like The Man Who Would Be King, or Man Who Would Be King, Sean Connery, is that right? Is that the right one? Yeah, The Man Who Would Be King. Movies like The Man Who Would Be King, which is where'd that go? Where like Freemasons find this country, make a pact to take over this country, and when they get there, they think they're gods, right? Have you seen this one? Very important movie. I would say everyone needs to watch The Man Who Would Be King. It's really huge because one of the things they notice, they think that they're, you know, the priests of this world try to like kill them because they want to prove that they're not gods, you know. But then the guy sees on his chest he has the Freemason sigil, and they've got that symbol since the, you know, Knights Templar left the gold there 1,000 years earlier. So they come up on this kind of like Jedi, right? And so there's this kind of idea in Star Wars that they're in a new world dealing with people that are completely different, but that doesn't exist anymore. It really, at that point, people became more and more similar. So what they tried to do with Star Wars is they would like, even the languages, right? Like the Ewok language is, they recorded a woman from she was from China, from the Hmong people, and they had her just telling stories that she remembered as a child, and then they like gibberished that. But that's what Ewoks are doing. They're speaking in a kind of gibberish version of Hmong. I mean, isn't that seems rather like, by today's standards, if South Park did that, people would think that was racist.
You want to talk about getting away with something with slightly racist overtones? How about the Minions?
Oh,
right? They're speaking this pigeonized, creolized version of who the heck knows what.
Korean. No, it's every culture at once, but they are the little North Korean yellow helpers of this Eastern European villain. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true.
It's hyper racist. I think it is.
Interesting.
Yeah. He's found North Korea.
Talks like this.
He's in, like, the North Koreans needed a Ukrainian, and he's basically he's a post-Soviet, right? So like the world left him behind, you know, kind of a thing. And this is really relatable, particularly not just to people in Russia, but in California or in Washington, D.C. the cosmonauts. I've known so many people whose parents were cosmonauts, or
Yeah.
they were, in the Soviet space program or rocket program or some sort of a program. And after the fall of the Soviet Union, they were forcibly hired and brought to the United States because the United States worried if they weren't hired by the United States, they would be hired by
I mean, it's called the press.
Iraq. Yeah.
It's literally getting called. It used to be pressed into service. It was part of being captured as a prisoner of war. One way to kind of get out of sitting in the cell was if you were willing to be pressed into service. And if you were in the creative corps, if you were a musician, you could. It happened. Speaking of Ukraine, it was the song "Stefania" that won the Eurovision contest. The guys who made it were very anti-war and didn't want their song to be co-opted by the Ukrainian government or the movement, so to speak. But they made a music video, and all the guys kind of played along. But because you ultimately become a targeted individual. That's the thing. Is fame in America? We're much less aware of that because we're 50 United States instead of 50 countries with border lines that each one has their own system of purging the.
We were far more like 50 countries than we were, and I think Europe is far more like 30 or 40. Is it 50 countries? They're like states. Like they're more like states than they were. The fact that you can just go now without borders through Europe really turned Europe into, because of the trains and everything. The integration of infrastructure made Europe much more like a country very quickly than the United States, which still is just so disconnected. And people have
now the equivalent is what time system are the satellites using to sync up the banking systems?
And we have phobias of each other in America that I mean, Europeans play soccer with each other, and Americans are afraid to leave their state because they think they'll be like someone's going to put a crack pipe in their car and arrest them in some like state prison in Arizona, or you know what I mean? Like people are afraid to travel in the United States.
Yeah. So speaking of the Soviet Union, you were saying that it wasn't all bad. So something that preceded the Soviet
universities, right? Like they got so many people to get degrees.
Something called it's abbreviated KGB, which we all know eventually it was it was like their intelligence service and KGB. But there's something called a Kunstgruppe, which Rafa was here, because in German that means artist group, and in Berlin they were famous for having this artist group in Berlin. And when you start having a phony war and people would broadcast back and forth, and it's this highly produced content, and is it real or is it not? I think that I know that obviously the KGB was something separate from the Kunstgruppe Berlin, but their whole point would be to maintain the human side of things, so that if if all of a sudden the government somehow has nothing to do but to pay itself to enforce every rule that they have on the books to the greatest extent. And again, it's like whoever told anyone to do that, I don't know, but there could be something written into the code of the government where we need to spend money on something. With these artist groups, you could not only wield influence and get messages out to the public with a variety of ways, but you end up with a bunch of people that are pretty much willing to do whatever, because they all come from kind of this same place of needing to create and needing to be able to make a splash. And the best way to do that is to align yourself with other people and hopefully do it in a positive way. And it was definitely not Eric Dubai saying what?
Oh, not Eric Dubay says never driving through Arizona.
Yeah, well, that was a strange for instance.
Man, bad things happen in Arizona, bro.
Avoid Arizona at all.
I don't know. I'm sorry. I have some scare. I love my friends from Arizona. I think it's a beautiful state, and I've been very fortunate in every place I've been. But I still think, in America, I've heard a lot of stories of people that have been arrested for the wrong reason in the wrong places, and they said, if you're not from this side of the tracks, you don't belong here. And I think that's interesting because that still exists, probably far more in the Western Hemisphere than it does in Europe. Europe has some interesting issues. I've been through some really dangerous parts of France, and I still came out feeling pretty fine. So I don't know. But similarly in the United States, right? Like I've been through Ohio, walking through Ohio. I remember we went to the GOP, and we had this Serbian photographer kid with this adorable like looked like he was in the Sound of Music kind of outfit from Santa Cruz, like helplessly not right for the Republican convention unless he was at the log cabin part of it or something. And we're just walking, and we both have hiking backpacks because like that was the easiest travel equipment. Like just bring everything in a hiking backpack that we had. So we look like backpackers that were supposed to be, you know, in the Swiss Alps or something like that. And we're walking through the ghetto, like they're probably one of the worst neighborhoods in Ohio, and we're just walking from the airport, and like at the airport even the police saw us and asked if they wanted to give us a ride or something to like where we're going, because like how unsafe it seemed like that we were walking. But like then so this purple like what do you call it, like a Chevy Impala or like this really interesting looking car with like spinning hubcaps and everything comes up, and music is playing, and like subwoofer in the trunk is just shaking, and they come and they go right past us a little bit, and then they stop the car.
On the MTV show Pimp My Ride.
It looked like a Pimp My Ride kind of thing. And they opened the doors though, and the dude had like a big old cup full of purple soda. I think it was wine and soda, right?
They call it scissor or something.
And he's just looks out, and he's just like, "Y'all lost." It wasn't like
it was more like telling you. Huh?
Yeah, it wasn't a question. It was like, y'all lost. It's like, oh, we're just walking to the.
Well, at least he didn't say you can't get there from here.
No, he was super cool.
Well,
he was
don't
super
even
cool.
know where we're going. Yeah, but
he was super cool. He was trying to be helpful. He was like, oh, these poor kids, like clearly don't know where they are and like are in danger. Like that is like, you'd be surprised how often you'll hear that in this world. You'd be surprised. I've heard that in a lot of countries. You know? Yeah, but that's the point. Yeah. Yeah, and like I think a lot of people would think like, "Oh man, what will happen next?" And like they expect the worst and not the best.
It's the part that makes least sense about civilization, but it's hard to explain that there would be so many of us unless 9,900,000 times out of 999,001, people just have an instinct to mind their own business and look out for people if they seem to be in danger. And as long as people operate on that principle.
Oh my God. And then right after that, so we went to the Dairy Queen or something because it was like an ice cream shop. And like, it's hot in Ohio. So we bought some ice cream. And we're sitting outside, you know, on the ground, eating ice cream. And then these police walk up to this other police. And then they're just like looking at us all horrified. And then they're just like, "Are you boys all right?" And then we're like, "Yeah, we're just getting ice cream. You know, we just came in from California. We're filming the GOP." And then the cop looks and he was like, "Oh, you're just getting, oh," and then he like radios his friends. "No, they're fine. No, yeah, no, they were just getting ice cream. No, we thought you were on fentanyl. Sorry. No, they're just from California. They really got ice cream. Yeah, they come here for ice cream." It was like the funniest.
You weren't going to make his day to get you in trouble, but in case you were about to die.
No, but he started laughing so hard. It was like, no one, you don't understand. No one actually comes here to get ice cream. So it's.
Are you saying maybe all food trucks are just a front for like transactions?
Was it the suggestion that they know everyone who comes in and out of that Dairy Queen or that particular ice cream shop because that is a front, and the police just know everyone in the town, and they let them do it after they know who they are? I can only speculate. However, I've seen that a lot in towns. Like they like to know who is doing stuff, and they're not necessarily arresting everyone.
But it's one of these really scary dystopian threats. It's like, no, trust me. If you play the sound of an ice cream truck, well, Joe Biden go running, but the kids will show up there. And right, if you're accusing the person running the food truck or the person playing the melody where everybody comes and eats, and the college when everyone's drunk, you show up and feed a whole bunch of them. And if you were really trying to dispatch with the infidels, it would be real easy to just poison everyone every now and then. But that never happens. But so now you're claiming that there is a specific kind of like poison. You call it a drug or a class what substance. And then you're saying that two people that end up going up to that window pass a package back and forth. It's a way, it's almost like a civilian shield. And it's right. It's like, don't send us to prison and don't persecute our guys in our network, because all we have to do one day is decide that we're upset. And now, like, watch, here's 200 college students that are on the news.
We live in a really weird world where, you're allowed to, and they sell and, advocate for things that will harm you, like smoking and alcohol and things like that. But they won't advocate for things that are good for you. Really.
And by the way, I'm not advocating for that. That was me just, again, this is like one of those life hack moments where you see the code and you're like, guys, but what are we supposed to do about this? And the answer is, like, again, like, kind of mind your own business, probably. I mean, I don't know.
Could be. Well, what else you got to show us?
My glorious personality. Well, no, so you were talking about being able to travel and being picked up by certain networks and then framed for something. So you've referred to the Shenzhen network before? And I'll see if there's any other screenshots I can pull up.
Shenzhen network? I don't recall what you mean.
Something I've heard Alex Jones talk about, and I believe it's a system in China where when you're traveling, you're kind of cleared in their network.
Oh, you mean, okay, so in other words, in China they have where they know where everyone is. That's what you're saying? Like a universal census? Yeah, so China has a system, it's essentially called the universal census, and there's probably a better term for that. I'd like to look it up. Universal census China.
I believe there's probably different networks, and
there's a term.
One of these things that I've never heard it talked about in the mainstream.
What's weird about this? So this is a nuance to this. This is not a communist invention. This is not the PRC's invention. Theoretically, if history isn't a complete lie, then this has been going on for thousands of years, and maybe it's only been going on for centuries if we don't have proof of it beyond that. But if the history is correct of China, then this has been going on for thousands of years. And the way it works is when you go from one town to another town, you have 24 hours to register that you're in that town, right? If you're staying in that town, if you're just passing through, I think that they let you just drive on their roads. But there's another reason why roads are kind of removed from their towns, the way they have the city network set up. So there are ways of keeping people from one zone.
And the benefits of something like that, if there's a conference and there's a whole bunch of people going there and they're in a certain age demographic and they need more insulin, well, a certain city, how is it going to know that in an emergency, if if everyone has to stay in that city for a week, that they have the medical supplies? It's like if there's a pregnant woman traveling, is there some sort of entity that's eventually trying to make sure that there's medical care available?
It makes a certain amount of sense from another perspective too, which is not. And so before we now think of it as like, this is our state. We own the state. We have the right to utilize the state by being in the state. But it didn't used to be that way. It used to be more that these were domains. We entered domains. When you're entering a domain, you submit to the rules and the demands and the obligations of that domain's master.
And it looks like you're paying a ransom for every citizen that travels on a certain road and gets from one place to another.
You don't have to pay to do it in China.
That's just one way of kind of framing the situation. The other one, it's like an unofficial toll that is kept track of on a much larger scale to make sure that there's not imbalances. And
they're just looking at it like China is very bureaucratic. It's been very bureaucratic for thousands of years. But the idea of having an awareness of whom is in your town is very practical, because by knowing who's come today, then you have an immediate. You don't have to worry about whether or not this person is a criminal or not. Like, you've already established, because you usually can judge a person's character if you're a police officer or something like that, an administrator, rather quickly. And so the fact that they have that data saved a lot of trouble. It was a lot easier to do in the old days because there were so few people that were coming to towns. But today it's actually become convenient to automate, right? And this is why people talk about Facebook and they wonder about China's system of social credit.
And that's where the threat of AI is, because, right, once it's automated, and there's the idea of the Great Reset where everyone gets a clean slate. And even if, as long as like you've served your time, even if it was for something like, violent manslaughter or armed robbery or something, or, you killed a pregnant woman because you were angry or something, or it's like, as long as and then all of a sudden you're Joe Smith in a new country, Timbuktu, you're given a new identity. Is there something still tagged to that you-ness of you? Because you could claim that, you're not going to be able to get a job, you're going to be persecuted, and, you found Jesus or whatever, or maybe you were framed, or who knows? But the other complication when you have a census, not just like a census where you're taking stock of everything, like tally me banana, Taliban, like how many, and but when you have a synthesis of two different systems, and one's using hieroglyphs and the other one's using phonetic symbols to represent words, and you get someone who's said in our system that they're suicidal, and maybe many times that they've had, but then when it gets translated to another system, they're saying, well, this person wants to die. And it's like, we don't do that here. It's like, is it true that in other places, like now again, it's like if you what is it, maid or something in Canada, and it gets misinterpreted, especially someone identity gets sent there and back, and now all of a sudden it's like, no, they want to die in as peaceful a way as possible, and if they're really, we won't know them, we're going to tell them it's vitamin C, and so
I think it's going to be very interesting.
That's the complications that we come across today, because it's all with the information density you can load into who is when and where. There's the when and where-ness, but then there's the who-ness and the what-ness.
But people that want to die, that's a temporary feeling. Feelings are temporary. So like even if that's a routine that you constantly run, feeling like you want to die, that's a routine that can be deleted and that can be replaced with other routines. So I think we're going to start seeing more and more that there's just simple solutions to these things, that there have been people arguing on one side or the other side with just not the tools yet that we needed to answer this. For instance, people who want to die, okay, now you've replaced their wanting to die with a wanting to live with a certain kind of code. Or people that want to die, you replace them, literally their mind with a new mind that is happy, a completely different mind. There's so many things that people aren't even aware could happen. If you wanted to be suicidal, you could replace it with donate your body back to society as a mathematician, or so I don't know. I mean, it'd be really interesting as time goes on when we start to realize that there's more value in life than we ever realized. And
some of the old monks, part of their self-sacrifice at the end wasn't to go out in a blaze of glory or to enshrine themselves on the top of some sepulcher, but it was to mummify themselves in place, essentially. And they would start to imbibe liquids that would slowly kind of turn them into something that they became like a living statue. When you read what George Washington drank when he died and the type of healers that were brought in.
Yeah, he was doing an apotheosis ritual to become a god.
Yeah, again, it was like immortality. So like, how do we do this where we're from? And it's like, really? Again, he might not have been that sick, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It's where you got to be careful with
we
take medical advice from.
I talked about this a bit on the USTP show, but they're silent. But like this idea of postmodernism and truth. So we live in this era where there are two versions of all of us, and there's the famous used to do this as well, but now everybody's doing this, and I exist, but you don't interact with the version of me that is in this real room right here. You're interacting with my simulation, my avatar, and your avatar is actually I'm interacting with your avatar. And more people, like tens of thousands of people, know my avatar than know me in person. And so it's a different experience.
Being back on your show, instead of having just a parasocial relationship, where one follows one's work, or I talk at my computer a lot less than I used to.
Yeah, but it's a different kind of relationship when it's built. Parasocial does help. But it's a different kind of relationship where you're producing another. I have another Andreas who more people know of, who will exist longer than I will likely, because there will be reruns of it, and that thing more people have experiences with, and people are real, and their experiences matter. So
sure.
That thing exists and is real because of that enough, and maybe more so than me, in the sense that less people know me, right? So at a certain point, what are you? And so people used to say, oh, well, this artist is a drunk or a bad guy or something, but I still like his work. And I think we'll be wrestling with this a lot in the future. Like, what does it mean to me? How did it impact me? That will probably end up mattering a lot more than what really happened. Which, yeah, postmodernism kind of sucks, but it's coming.
Well, speaking of the truth, there's quite literally, and everything's backwards on the streaming, but the truth. And if you notice, there's a basketball with a little headband on it. And there's a Celtics star called named Paul Pierce, and his nickname was The Truth. And after, it wasn't quite 7 years of famine and 7 years of peace like Joseph in Egypt, but there was a lot of crummy crummy cannabis around flooding the market. And all of a sudden I found the truth again. And it was like, there wasn't much of it available when it was there. But when the truth comes through, wow. So makes me appreciate, as opposed to being disappointed by all the weed I've been smoking for the past 3 months. It's like, well, at least I found a little bit of truth.
A little bit of truth in the world. Yeah. Truth still exists. I'll give you that. Word of wisdom is all about like the herb being good for you. So I think that's congruent with Mormonism, just from a really distorted perspective.
I'm surprised you haven't tried to at least get me to, or you don't really, you're not evangelical. You just give a platform for all types of.
Yeah, you are definitely going to have to go hardcore into X Church. So we'll have to talk more about time travel, of course.
If you just wanted to quickly run through to see if there were any interesting tidbits, I could pull up the Instagram. If I just send you like one thing a week, I'm sure some of that stuff was interesting.
Yeah, sure.
I'll pull it up on my end. But we need another music break. Pick another song, or are we just going to do the meta thing again?
That's true. I didn't quite finish the Agenda 21 one there.
Some of the Agenda 21. I'm a new world order, baby. I am the monarch from the mating of KGB and CIA. I fight more to be distracting from the games I like to play. New world order, baby. New world order, baby. New world order.
It's got that drum and bass.
New world order, baby. Wear your heart on your sleeve. Put your heart now in my hand.
But
it's a good way to land on the scene. Like, remember the show I brought up, Normal World, right?
Oh, I can turn it down? Sweet. I didn't know I could do that. Sorry.
Because Flawed is the only guest on Musical World.
Yeah, on
Normal World.
I gotta step it up. I like that name too. New World Order, baby. New World Order, baby. See, because it's ironic. For those of you who didn't get that. And then, so the other thing is, some people don't know this, I guess, but I don't know if they care. But I kind of like progressive hardcore a little bit. I think it's kind of cool. I like that progressive hardcore when it gets a little like screamy, like screamcore, deathcore. You've noticed some of my friends are death metal like heads, and Andy Rouse, Deep Share Podcast, makes metal. I like some of that stuff too. So
aggressive.
Yeah. You can see it's about to happen, I think. Did you find, you're looking for the Instagram thing? I'll check comments too.
Yeah.
Sam, here he is.
Oh, yeah.
Sam's going to play this on the radio. Guys, if you like puppets that reveal the strings, you want to watch Sam the Newsman, and you want to listen to Sam the Newsman, because he's the most trusted puppet in news history since Roswell. Blows my mind. Good guy. Hi, Trav. Hi, fam, just popping in. The AI music is something. Thanks, Britt. Travis says, 2001 in Cincinnati, the DEA put a sign on the highway that said, "Think it's dry now. Wait till October." New World Order, baby.
So, have you seen there's a Chinese highway that uses lasers over top of the street in order to make it, less likely that people get distracted or fall asleep. Light show.
That sounds cool. I like light shows. Yeah, there was this cool thing where they're talking about quackery at the Museum of Science, and they had like the chromiotherapy, and they're like, "This is silly. People used to think looking at light was going to help you feel better, and maybe it was going to help you with your breath." They thought that the light could destroy bad breath, which there's they use light and braces and all that. I mean, I think there's something there. Afterwards, go to the IMAX theater, and we're paying $20 a person to see fractal patterns of light projected, which make us feel good. So the fact they call it quackery and then they're still doing it, it's like, I get it, pharmaceutical companies are paying for the science museum, but dang, fool,
So the IMAX used to be the pinnacle of if you were going to make something.
Oh yeah, I tried showing the kids because they had this freaking IMAX projector and I was just like, no one's gonna care because you have to understand how big film was.
And it's only a matter of mapping it to it. Before, you used to have film and special lenses.
Yeah.
And now the Sphere exists, and I'm sure whatever custom
I like the Sphere
screen setup, and then we're gonna build another one in London of a slightly different size and specifications, not exactly the same. And I bet you it would have been. The two video displays probably aren't compatible, so to speak. There would have just been something different enough about them, and the joke or the culture jamming, as Alex Stein loves to try to do. The suggestion, I'll just make it into the ether. I'm not actually going to put my effort into trying to make it happen, but would be to have something like a David Icke 9-hour version of the Zeitgeist series, including the addendum and maybe an updated one that really goes back and tries to fact check and it'd be pulling it through. So there's something called son et lumière, meaning sound and light show, which I think is really ironic because Shakespeare was famous for his sonnets. And if you were in the time, you oftentimes saw the sound and light show was shortened to just a sonnet, meaning sound and. Because it might be live action, it might be projection, maybe it was early versions of television or projection mapping, that sort of thing. And so now a sonnet, and when we learn about them, they're just these like stanzas of 14 lines of words, but really that word in the time that those things were produced meant sound and light show. And so
really?
Yeah, like Tesla was kind of angry with Marconi because he was saying, what do you mean you're only going to transmit sound over these frequencies? You know you can do video as well. But.
That's an interesting...
So if you type it in as a separate SONNE and then space ET, sound et lumière, then it's a synchronicity almost. It belongs on Think Tank. But.
Son et lumière. Okay, so sound and light, form of nighttime entertainment. Performance around the world. It doesn't quite say on the wiki page how old it is, of course, but you have to imagine sound and light shows must go back quite far.
It's almost a form of apotheosis, as you were saying, where if there's not a person being deified at the center of a sound and light show, then it can be a concept, or it can just be a cause for creating awe, as opposed without it being in reverence of a specific deity or cause. So King Charles, and I was raised on, this little ring of Carl Street and Charlatan and Charlemont Road. But the concept of a charlatan, and it's very difficult to be online and be talking about anything without someone who's able to find and fact check and parse out some part of what you're saying that could be said to be manipulative or who knows what, misinformation, malinformation.
How hardcore can you handle?
Well, let's go for it.
Okay, no, keep going. But I'm just gonna.
Well, because we're wrapping up too on a Sunday. But a charlatan. So the idea of we're with King Charles out there. How do we
wait for it?
How do we embrace it?
I made this for Andy.
Nice. I can continue my rant through this music.
I'll turn it down for you.
No.
He's just gonna say Bach Saga. He's like Bach Saga. Bach Saga.
What would it be like to channel? What would it be like to channel creative energy around?
It's not quite reggae.
No. Yeah, around producing a new age version, a 9-hour David Icke type presentation inside the sphere, where you'd like people would bring they would catheterize themselves before they went in there because they wouldn't want to miss it. This is not the kind of thing you go Do you want to draw more or less of a target on your back? Do you want more or less of a target on your back is the question. Right?
That's hard to know. Hear more pop music. It's okay.
Or instead of making your own.
This is dangerous. I'm sorry. I didn't know I could control the sound level so high. My bad.
But so you did surprise me where I didn't have quite a lot of time to get my material together.
We'll do it again more often. I'm sorry. I've been saying for the last 3 weeks that we were gonna do a show, and I was just like every Sunday it's been impossible. But we're gonna make it happen more often.
I believe that one of the very first times we went on, I texted "F it, we'll do it live." Bill O'Reilly is famous for kind of blowing up and saying that. And I wonder if people thought we were about to disclose something, or that everyone saw these texts like, "What are these two about to do?" Talk about it live. And then someone set up a fake sister stream on Odyssey, or was it Rumble or something, that was like doxing Alex Jones, and it was around the same time that I came on, and I got nothing to...
Dude, wasn't even you. Yeah, it wasn't your fault.
Anyways, trying to think. As far as the spirit of the times we're in, is the pandemic over? We may never know, but I did get to finally have a family meal around Thanksgiving again for the first time.
Oh yeah.
In about this, I don't know, when did I stop cutting my hair? It was about this long, so yeah, still wearing it around as like a living memory.
How based was the family Thanksgiving? That's always a good thing.
It was actually great.
Yeah, dude. I love Thanksgiving. Brittany for 333. This is for the Box August song. LOL. Yeah. Thank you. I was just trying to prove that techno doesn't have to sound like techno, but there is a deep love of pop in me. Let's be real. Like, as much as I love deathcore and progressive hardcore and trap and EDM, who doesn't love Baroque pop, right? It's just, who doesn't? It's just, that's the point. Right.
What's that, Andreas? You want me to psychoanalyze my family online live to the world for no reason?
If you're into it.
Is that, if you insist, I mean, I'll psychoanalyze what, I mean, it's like I saw my brother and he didn't eat for 5 days after the meal, which was, he wasn't always with, and he said it released all types of interesting chemicals, but I didn't really quite get to talk to him about what that felt like.
That's interesting. Days of fasting around Thanksgiving, I'm a big fan.
He brought his girlfriend, and there was someone else that was our age that had a fiance that was like 25 that was there. And so he left, and she, at one hand, she was like, yeah, well, I'm more mature and he has kids, and it's like, wait a minute, but I'm not
more
the
mature
fiance.
than you.
I'm 10 years older and I'm the girlfriend. Wait a minute. And so then I'm sure something on the car ride home, and be less and less specific about it.
That's pretty based. Well,
I'm sure everyone in my life so appreciates me just, being willing to share everything about myself and being an open book to everybody.
I mean, like, my Thanksgiving wasn't that different, I think we all have that kind of vibe when you're lucky enough to have one. And I think that's the thing I can also get behind is it's been a while for me as well. So it's kind of nice to be around the family at Thanksgiving or at Christmas cause it's been some years since I've done that. And so it's interesting to see my brother and what what he's become. And, it's,
well, when you don't get vaccinated, it's a rough life out there sometimes.
Yeah, because everyone's trying to buy your sperm. I know.
I haven't been getting those ads.
Oh yeah, really? I get those ads a lot. I don't really click on them, but Facebook seems to really promote those ads. And you've seen the one that was like, "Were you molested by a boxing coach? Here's our trauma lawyer support thing." I was like, man, I've done a amazing job at confusing Facebook.
They tried to pigeonhole you with that one.
They have no idea. They're just throwing darts at the board. They're like, well, maybe I don't know. Maybe he was like in a really bad boxing match. That's all I can think that could have made him like this. I love that about Facebook.
What else is going on? Let's see, pop culture wise.
How's yoga? Oh, you can talk about pop culture too. But yeah, yoga is important.
Hear it come up. There's a lot of free advertising online. My yoga studio itself has been stuck in a place was a limbo.
Oh yeah.
But
it's a holy place.
Eventually being manifested. There's issues outside of my control. So all I can do is choose to exist in the day to day and lean into the nowness,
Do you know who Max Martin is? You brought up pop culture. Max Martin.
I've not heard of him. No.
Oh, dude. Hold on one second. So, you just don't know you
I probably have. Okay.
Yeah, you just don't know. And most people have. It's crazy. Most people don't know that they have. This is this guy, Max Martin. You all know him. Every single one of you. Your parents know him. Think about this. It's impossible. He's written all of the songs. He'd have top 10, 9 of the top 10 songs at the same time. He'd have 160 songs competing in the top 200 most played songs at once. Freaking crazy. From the the 90s, I'd say probably like mid 90s, really, because in Sweden and everything, and then by
Geez,
until
how
like
could
2012.
someone be so consistent? Well, what if he told you that he developed the same way Bill James was hired out of MIT to work for the Red Sox to develop their own specific algorithm to evaluate statistics and contributions a player may or may not make and how much that's worth monetarily? And
Yeah, dude. Taylor Swift. Everyone's like, Taylor Swift writes her own music.
He had a computerized playbook. It was like some golden tablet. It had some
Oh.
Egyptian face of Horus on it. And I don't know, he opened it up and it was a hits book. You know?
Coldplay, Weekend, Bon Jovi, It's My Life Now or Never. All this. He wrote all of this music. Justin Bieber. In some music he just produced and everything. And by 2012, you got other people working with
I like
him.
how
and
you met Justin Bieber on a bridge one time.
God, so weird. And then I told about the other time, right, where he tried to he got almost in a fight with Judd, our buddy Judd. We were in Calabasas.
Okay.
And so this was years earlier than that, right? He got he's driving like really crazy in Calabasas, and he comes.
My question is, does he still have a droopy eye? He had that one thing where one of his eyes was.
I think now he does, right? Like it's a sad. I don't know, Justin Bieber.
Apparently, if you snort the wrong kind of whatever, it'll just paralyze the nerve on that side.
That's true. That is also true. That can happen.
COVID.
But I don't think that's what. I don't think he did that. I don't know. Face. Is he okay?
I haven't really gotten to. Yeah, he's been out of the public eye, so to speak.
Ooh.
Since then.
Yeah, I don't know. Cancels tour.
And I don't mean to be throwing shade, and especially if that is a permanent condition, that's not something to be like made fun of, I guess.
Yeah, totally. 14 days ago have revealed strange facts about their marriage, has legs for days. I don't know. I have to look into that. I don't know, but I imagine that he probably still does, although he'd be taking steps to have the most advanced medical procedures done. Probably electrocute your face, I think would probably be people do that.
Well, right. What if Elon said, I can get the muscles to stimulate, right?
Yeah, I think
it's I can wiggle my ears, but what if all of a sudden you get in some sort of an accident and now I can only wiggle one ear?
RGZ says his face is still paralyzed, so
okay.
I'm going to go ahead and take that as
and the reason truth. It makes news because it's so shocking. America's sweetheart. He was this, archetypal kind of male
from Canada.
and then he, they love building them up and then chopping them down, or
what's
the real follow up is is that a permanent condition? And I haven't really heard him speak about it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Once you're doing what you're doing, so that's what's interesting. What's better than being famous?
And ultimately, it really doesn't matter, right? Eventually, you just wear sunglasses and he's still Justin Bieber, and it's like, oh, why you don't? It's like I was never really concerned with how sexy Justin Bieber was, or how attracted I was to him, or how marketable his sex appeal was, based on his how dreamy his eyes were in the first place.
It's du jour. It's du jour.
At the same time, I could see for him it being kind of a bummer in needing
Jeremy
to
Fawcett.
Navigate.
Thank you very much.
People that
please take those memberships while you can, everybody. If you're not a member, and thank you for that, Jeremy Fawcett. And if you became a member, then go look at the deleted Too Hot for TV members only content, which is pretty sweet. According to Annie Letterman, if you Botox next to an area, it should redirect the lost movement from the Botox area. Well, this is all really important information that I had no idea about. Max Martin, though, I just want to say, because it's kind of interesting to me, is that what's better than being famous? What's better than being a famous person?
Is being immortalized.
To be an enigma. To be an enigma. Okay. Enigmatic is to be an enigma is better. So
like Rick Rubin.
Yeah, you don't exactly. If you're behind the scenes, like Strauss, like William Strauss or something like that, you're creating far more influence that way. So Max Martin creating Bon Jovi and NSYNC and Backstreet Boys and Britney Spears and Taylor Swift and Katy Perry and Usher. It's like every kind of genre, and just so he's competing with himself to see what people like in the top 10. Right, and that's fascinating because he's using people as instruments then.
And you're no longer looking for external feedback to see, am I good at what I do for a living? Because when you have that much success and that high a success rate.
Yeah, but I think you also do see that like different instruments. Now Britney Spears is an instrument, or Backstreet Boys become instruments, or Maroon 5 becomes you then see, did people like this style, or which people like which style? Because I think a long time ago they realized there's not a best flavor to anything. Like you don't want to just sell your one flavor of a sauce. You want 3 flavors of the sauce, because people like variety, and you get a 3-pack. So people love that idea of diversity. It has all this gesundheit. But yeah, I think also interesting was that Max Martin started out working for Dennis Pop. If I can find Dennis Pop.
His last name is Pop. That's a little on the nose, don't you think?
Isn't it? Yeah, Dennis Pop, whose real name was Dag Christervold. Dag Christervold, who was born in Norway, and or born to the Norwegian immigrants, rather, in Sweden. But he made all kinds of Swedish pop in the 80s and 90s, or like but before him he worked for someone who did ABBA and everything else like that. And he helped with ABBA throughout the 80s. But he did 3T, Ace of Base, Backstreet Boys, also Britney Spears, NSYNC, E-Type, Dr. Alban, Robin, Five, before he died in a rather tragic way at the age of 35 in 1998. So kind of interesting. I don't know. But yeah, pop musician. People know all of his music, but don't know who he is. I find that interesting. Memory Man says, "Smash Friends." Member for 39 months. 39 months. Wow. I should do a thing like Adam does, where I'm like, we could do like another like.
See, he was spinning the UFO, right? Remember that was a thing, and he would get out this little air cannon.
Yeah.
And he would spin it up to like 10,000 RPM. Now, the failure point of one of those mechanisms, if it just happens to have a flaw in it over time, or you speed it up, it finds resonance, it gets off balance, is that it just shatters into 1,000 pieces and sprays out a shrapnel at about 10,000 RPM. So it was just, as far as like a ticking time bomb, I think he's gone away from that as a go-to prop for every time he gets something. He does something that has like a 1 in 10,000 chance of exploding in his face. And sorry, this is my risk averse status. Don't think like have one of those and show it occasionally, because it's probably not going to happen.
You probably want to
practice of doing it 10 times a day with it really close to your face, kind of in the frame sort of thing. It's almost like when Alex Jones committed to signing all of his books or something, or someone does that, that can be a form of chemical warfare, because they're going to get sick. And it's like, if you spend an hour a day signing something in Sharpies without a gas mask on, I mean, you're losing brain cells for sure.
Here, we'll try one more. Let's see if this song is.
I'm sure there's sports memorabilia signings where athletes have big games the next day, and all of a sudden they just wake up with a paint tune for an hour.
No,
I'm feeling it.
It's a little stronger.
So is this just generated based on the request for more roots reggae, or?
Yep.
Solid. Sounds like a little bit the band Midnight, MIDNITE.
Here, let's try the second version. It's a little weird.
Ooh, wow. That was nice.
There we go. Like this. What do you think? Right? Yeah?
100%. Like straight from the source, right?
Tartary stands alone. Stolen by Freemasons.
So reggae gets into Babylon, but what if the new twist is that it also starts talking about the dynamic between Babylon and Carter?
By Freemasons.
BBDC all of a sudden. Where's he at?
There's a little bit. It's that part, you know?
This is literally just, you're saying this is prompted. You just were able to tell it to make something.
Yeah. We got a super chat from Brittany. Play Box Saga for member milestones. Okay, yeah. So when we do member milestones, we can play the Box Saga from now on. That might be a good thing to do. Box Saga.
What's hilarious is, people are willing to pay a certain amount of money for access, early access to whether it be ChatGPT version X or OpenAI. And once you get a certain number of people entrained and being convinced that they're willing to pay $10,000 a day to get access to this chatbot, all you need is a person on the other end of it to kind of just, it's not that there also isn't some other massive, language learning model that can say things back to you, but it's a version of the internet's 411. Because back in the day, if you just wanted to talk to someone, you just needed to ask for a phone number. Well, wasn't it 411? And then someone would pick up and say city and state.
Yeah. I was thinking this the other day. It was even weirder because you're like, tell me about, now you're like, tell me about a picture, because it used to be Google, or like, if you had the 411, then it could connect you to the real person, right? But they could also give you information about a thing. So you could be like, can you tell me about the address of this place, or where I can get the contact for this and that? That's kind of the main function. So imagine you're like unable to actually get a picture, right? Or a good, a picture is the idea, like a painting. So I can't get the painting to you. Well, I can give you a photo of the painting, but some people have a problem with that. They don't want the actual painting. So what I could do is I could describe the painting very well, but I could also make another painting based on that painting that isn't the same painting, that you can see and see if you like it enough to get the original painting. There's the idea of there being
a concierge service, and then what is that concierge service capable of manifesting?
Yeah, you've got AIs become idiot savants that can paint a fake version of a Renaissance painting and be like, well, it's kind of like this. I don't. It's not the real painting, but it's kind of like this. And you can say, wow, that's good enough, or it makes me want to know what the original painting really is and get a copy of it. That's going to be crazy. That's what we're doing.
In Boston, in the early days of when they had the telephone network set up, 4-digit codes, there was famously kind of young women, or that was the perception is that's who's picking up the phone.
Yeah.
And
my great aunt was
at any time of day you would pick up, and there were like these kind of sultry voiced or just very sympathetic characters, and eventually they knew all their neighbors, and they knew kind of have an encyclopedic
need to know. This is totally true what you're saying. My great aunt was.
You could almost call up and ask about social events, or
surely you could have. My God, this is so real. And my great aunt did this, and it was actually an amazing job because you had to switch lines back and forth to connect phones in the early days, and especially in California. You'd have numbers that were like Yorkshire 231 or something like that. So you'd have to know to go to the Y section. And this is not that different than plugging guitar amplifiers in, right? The same cables. This is where that technology comes from. So it's kind of interesting how it works. But yeah, over a period of time, you'd eventually know everything about everyone if you became this job. So they kind of phased out its relevance, I think, on purpose.
When Radiohead had a kind of famous performance on SNL where he brings one of these boards on and he shows the audience that that's how he's making the music, and he's plugging it in different things at different rates, and then also kind of frantically singing. And
somebody asked for more Bach Saga. We'll just have to
more Bach Saga.
Saga with some pictures of pictures of people working.
Speaking of Rafa, the work he's been doing with David Ewing Jr. hardcore.
Dude, Raph's been doing amazing stuff too.
So instead of like Spotify right now, you have a window pulled up that's auto-generating music and different genres? Or?
That's the future.
Okay.
But the thing is, like, Spotify, like, people keep telling me to put my music on Spotify, but until they fix their rates, dude, like, you don't make any money off that. Heimbach.
The idea is to get the music out to the people. A lot of times when Alex Jones plays copyrighted music on his intros and outros, he's sitting there singing half a lyric, which oftentimes are somewhat satanic or demonic. And when they do a replay of him, for whatever reason, they've cut the track in the background. He's just there kind of like nodding his head at the beginning and then saying some really weird shit. And then it's hard to know what you're looking at sometimes. But when you cut out the background track for copyright purposes,
I can't find it now, but yeah, basically I think he had like 1 million views. Sorry.
This more replicates the experience of hanging out. And if you and I were in a room and we were trying to go over something on a laptop together, like if I had a whole bunch of just interesting images lined up, which I can do for next time, again, kind of caught me off guard here.
I just hate how Spotify's not actually
having music
paying
on
artists.
though replicates more of that social environment. And then what is more listenable? It means you have to actually be able to present it in short bits instead of capturing someone's attention for.
Did I spell his name right? What am I doing wrong here? That's not like Spotify. So the guy Heinbach, he's put this Heinbach. That's what I gotta do. Like Heinbach had 1 million annual Spotify streams and earned $2,160 before taxes.
Right.
Spotify is freaking evil, and I'm not going to put my stuff on Spotify until they get their act together. And the other thing is that they're being banned. Like, so Uruguay made a rule that you'd have to have equitable remuneration for artists, right? So Spotify ceased operations in Uruguay.
Wow.
Okay. You know, and just these little things that I'm like, okay.
They treated it like Napster. They stamped it out.
Right, which is
Whereas
really
in
interesting.
America, what's interesting is things tend to reinvent themselves, and it puts on a new skin and a new hat, and it calls itself something new until it is no longer what is being persecuted and trying to be stamped out.
Yeah, so I hear Brittany saying, I love Spotify. I have a couple problems with Spotify. I love Bandcamp. I think Bandcamp's awesome. It's a tragedy that they just got picked up and purchased, so I don't know the future of Bandcamp, so I hope that they stay a rad company. But Bandcamp is like the best company. If you really like artists and you care about artists, like going through Bandcamp, you can actually make sure they're supported. I put my music on Bandcamp for that reason. But the people like Spotify because it leads you to other music, right? Like you can find a song and you can pick another song.
Sure, actually, it is the algorithms that are built in are helpful at suggesting music and.
Yeah, but there's another thing for that, Ubuntu.
And if they monetized more, would the money go out to the investors and the CEO, or would it go to the artists? You know. So,
well, I mean, so Ubuntu worked on something like this for a while. So Linux, you know, one of the things is it is ideological as well as software. So trying to figure out, and you can think about this as an important thing, like software. People are like, why is the internet dividing us so much? Well, the internet is designed to divide us. Tools are built to design. We used to use tools to unite us.
Patented the kinetoscope or whatever, you know, version of the silent movie machine that he made. Everyone else had to close their theater because they were all of a sudden infringing on his patent with a device that had probably been built by someone 200 years ago, you know, that was actually just still performing certain types of Sonnet Lumiere shows. And, you know, some of them were actually moving picture shows, whether they be, you know, flip book style things that were projected up onto a larger screen or otherwise. And so, I mean, that's an interesting, because with Napster, what you're really saying is philosophically, you were not aligned with Napster then.
I was all about Napster. I thought Napster was cool.
So then how is Spotify any different other than that they're just paying people very little as opposed to nothing?
I guess the difference is that they don't have to do it that way, and they've become a big company. So when Napster first existed, it existed to break the system that didn't exist yet. To break the system that was broken already, like record stores and everything else was broken, and to introduce the technical like reality of this is going to be how it's going to work. And in the future, you know, we'll figure it out. And in the meantime, music has to be exchanged in such a way that people realize that buying vinyls and t-shirts and concert tickets are the way to support an artist, which is why Taylor Swift, you know, did these tours and why artists became tour artists, but they really already were tour artists at that point. But they were being exploited just as bad by record companies a lot of the time before that. So
I'm not saying this is not an easy one to come down on the right side of necessarily in the light of the SAG strike and the
Yeah,
the right to
yeah. I mean, I
strike.
get that some music isn't going to be worth as much. Media is not going to be worth as much, and we're getting to a point where free media or media that's paid for by soap opera, soap boxes, soap companies, that free media is going or gratis media,
Okay.
produced
But
media.
so Andreas, you understand though, when people come at you, and you tend to err on the side of obviously kind of advocating for the use of AI for creative purposes and not seeing
Yeah,
a real problem with that, is even if it's aggregating its styles from, kind of other quote unquote open source content or things that may or may not be trademarked or behind a paywall, or and you're more interested in it from the technical side, whereas other people would say that AI is Spotify for visual artists. You see, or it's like Napster for visual artists in terms of the fact that it just means they don't get any money or even a little.
that's fair to say to some extent. So you look at like Lollipop was going to be my example, and
Toolkit to
Lollipop is
include AI, I think.
Lollipop
Really,
is the Spotify alternative kind of, and there's a lot of apps like
yeah.
this that let you circulate playlists, tracks that you can put in scripts that will connect you to basically radio servers that have free music and people that want their music to be heard because they're in a condition where they want people to like their music, and maybe at some point, I mean, this is the thing though,
Yeah, on
with virtually
Spotify, maybe it's
every
easier to identify stars and promote them.
with any artist that's alive, like I tend to go to their show if possible, and I buy their art and music on vinyl. And so I don't know. To me, it seems like I support artists this way because of Napster. Like I learned that
It's easier to rack up listens than it is to rack up plays if you have a fan base that likes your music.
yeah, and the direct support to an artist is always the best because you're just cutting out
And they
a lot of
open
people.
source, Spotify open sources the views thing. And sure, you can try to hack that. But if you're an artist and you're just approaching someone saying, I'm a band traveling through, do you have an audience? Or how likely are we able to build an audience, for a live show? And it can be based on views. And whereas Napster would have been hard to, or that type of format.
Yeah, I just feel like Spotify could
Everybody
be
like
a
that.
bit more fair. I think that
See, and I think
YouTube is
people
even
still make
fairer.
a living, doing watercolors. And some people that use Photoshop and make beautiful individual images and like something that AI can create 10 versions of in, within half an hour of really trying to train it into what it is you're doing and knowing which tools to use for what purposes. When you bring the music element into it, now we're really complicating things. But even so, we went from the visual artists and AI, people complaining about AI. I feel like you're just challenging people to step up your game to really take hold of the powerful tools that are now available. And I don't know, with comic books, knowing they were done by hand versus auto-generated, or
It's going to
can be
be important for people to have human touch still because I think a lot of people are interested in the guiding hand, and it's important that stories elucidate truths, and I think people will always be like, wow, someone behind that knew something and they're trying to explain it using metaphor, and I think that'll always be more interesting than people realize. But we will have surrealism and meta humor that's coming, like people just finding what they enjoy in a thing, like looking at a sunset and laughing and crying. I think we're coming to a beautiful empathetic time, right?
Yeah. And I think one way you create these group experiences, we were talking about something like the Sphere or IMAX shows, where you just have as multimedia and interactive feeling as possible while sitting still. And this could be sewn back into the idea of transhumanism and trying to create experiences that are for people that are differently abled, and at the same time creating a universal experience that everyone does experience in the same way, which is sitting still, observing with their eyes the kind of visual spectacle that's in front of them. And I think bringing up the photo phone is just kind of a closing note. And I sent a super chat the other day saying version 1 of the photo phone didn't involve electricity. And so you could use a series of magnifying glasses and mirrors to focus your sunlight and then just basically create a cone with a mirror on it and shout into it, with a little bit of a diaphragm to create the vibration. And then someone on the other end with the right receiver could have something they would just hold up to their ear. They would put a little lamp black on it, and apparently that would amplify.
Photo dub. That's what we'll do. We'll make a new kind of reggae.
Effect.
It'll be photo dub journeys. That'll be our new
But
kind of
the
music.
whole
all done on photophones.
Tartarian architecture, if that's one thing I can long-term try to build a thread around, because my background, my degree is kind of a blend of art in architecture, history, and then architectural design as well. but this very shape of a dome, towers to the dome, so to speak. There was it is a conical, and then instead of a photophone, we're thinking of photons only as light energy, but it could be as radio energy. And I think as soon as we're able to set up these little tabletop demonstrations where a bunch of people can sit in a room and chant, and there's no wires. This is there's not even any latent battery cells that are sitting charging anything necessarily, except right up at the top. This is the idea of capture your flag. And if your radio station was buzzing on someone else's frequency, all they would have to do, they wouldn't have to knock down your whole tower or dome. If they were really precise and civilized, they would fly their blimp over and they would just take off the very top part of whatever it was that you were broadcasting from the top of your dome. And it became a very delicate game of capture your flag. And they'd maybe even come and offer to reinstall a new one.
Domes.
With how precise it was, they were able to take the other one off.
Here's what kind of bothers me, though. It's like it's always a half dome. These people never think, like, if you're going to do this, dig a hole, put a golf ball halfway submerged in the earth, yo. Like, I want to see the bottom of the dome be a basement. I just don't see why all this half dome business, I'm not a fan. I want the whole thing. I want that underdome. You know what I mean?
In outer space, it would make a lot more sense to do it that way.
Well, and this is like,
but they only want you looking out in one direction, anyways, because then it can become psychedelic.
There better be cities underground filled with 40,000 people, and it should be right under Burning Man. I'll tell you what, that's probably where they have NORAD's secret city. It's probably awesome. I'll tell you what. Well,
you heard the guy on Joe Rogan talking about being in orbit, and when you're circling in the right direction, and within a 24-hour span, I think it goes from light to dark like 18 times, and it eventually looks like a coin flipping from light to dark, and it can be really disorienting. But
that sounds pretty fun.
On that note, do you want to look up what kind of a Mayan day it is, or next time we'll aim for a monkey day? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm all about all days. Let's see here. What kind of day is it today? That's a great question. Today's a red rhythmic serpent. I organize in order to survive, balancing instinct. I seal the store of life force with the rhythmic tone of equality. I am guided by my own power doubled. Very cool.
Nice.
You can follow, if I go type this in here, it should say in the light center at Astro Dream Advisor, Red Serpent is your conscious self, who you are and who you are becoming. I am the flint and the tinder of the sacred fire, reads the meditation for Red Serpent. In the great mystery, I'll zoom in a bit so you can see what it says. In the great mystery, flint and tinder represent the instinctive combustion that initiates movement in the physical body towards union with spirit. When flint and tinder are brought together, the spark of divinity awakens and ignites the fire of your essence. Red Serpent invites the purifying spark of the sacred fire, the kundalini, to align and integrate your body, mind, and spirit. Red Serpent can help you uncover apparent blockages in specific chakras to clear and align them. If you are working on a process of purification, invite Red Serpent to assist you. Medicines, removing toxics, it's pretty interesting. Yes. So today's a good day for healing. Oh, Sam made it. Sam! What's up, Sam?
Hello! Listen, I'm telling you what, right now, I had to sit there and get on at least once during the show, at least sometime today. There we go. Turn it up.
Ah, it's the best, right? Hold on, will you?
There's nothing abnormal about someone with a puppet showing up on stream, because I'm part of.
Oh, you know Sam, right?
This is part of the. I'm honored, actually.
We're all puppets.
I'm gonna try to lip sync it.
Newsman, the puppets and newsman, the most trusted puppet in news without all the fuss, telling the truth. He's just a newsman.
Andreas, did you have this ready to go for him?
Oh, I've been working on this, yeah.
Okay. We start using this for one of my bumper musics at the radio show.
I thought he might have come in pumping this guy. No, okay.
From now on, this is like, I'm going to have a little speaker sent to Sam, and whenever he walks around, I'm going to have his agent carry the speaker in front of him and behind him, so people know, like, he's coming and going. You know what I mean? They're going to hear this.
It's like walking down the aisle to a wrestling ring.
Exactly.
I was say, it's your walkout music, yeah.
Yeah, sure. There it is. Well, listen, I tell you what, Andreas, you looked sharp all day. I saw you earlier.
You look sharp.
Listen, well, you know what? I had to share my sharpness with yours on the screen, because I'm sure that probably Wednesday you'll be in a t-shirt.
You have not aged a day since Roswell?
Well, I mean, this puppet genes.
Did you age before Roswell is the real question. And is there something you want to tell us?
listen, I have signed too many NDAs, so I can't tell you anything.
I will tell you that
Nice.
Sam, we're
Nice.
trying to support Sam though, because he does have a rare puppet medical condition that he developed in Roswell, and so we are trying to. Luckily, puppet medicine has advanced a lot further than it's been in 20 years, but we're going to be working to try. There's a cure, and it's coming, and we're
But it's not funded by big pharma. No. This is underground.
Yeah.
Nothing like a bunch of dirty needles. You know what I mean? So,
No,
anyways, guys, listen. I want to tell you that I've had a wonderful time, but Mr. Poser, I need to ask you just one important question.
Please go right ahead.
What is the strain? Strain of truth, if you
Like,
will.
you can't handle it.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, you just can't handle
It
it.
is actually called the truth.
Yeah. Talk about product placement. This is the
there
first
you
product placement on the show, I suppose.
That's really good. Of
It's
course,
a stupid thing to do because I already can't find it anywhere, and it may come back in stock sometimes, but every now and then, again, it's just
sometimes the truth just has to hide away. It's not always available to you.
it
Sometimes you
almost
got
makes me embarrassed. It's like when I started teaching yoga, I was really bad, but I just didn't really understand or know how bad I was until I got better. And then I'm sure if I went back and I'd be embarrassed. And so when I think again about the weed I've been smoking versus that,
as long as you
Okay.
can still touch your toes.
Yeah,
That's-
I've always been a fan of smoking salmon. I think that's the secret.
Smoking salmon. Yeah, what are you smoking out of?
Andreas was saying we don't want to
Yo,
be
wood
ableist,
hut.
and so not everybody has
Oh,
toes.
okay, a wood hut. I got you.
Just in case someone on the might not have toes, and for instance, someone
Yeah.
who only ever appears from like Shakespeare from here up, So
Oh, so you
Sure.
don't think that I have toes? Hold on, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Not only do I have toes, sir, but I'm rocking Jordans. Are you kidding
Oh
me?
my gosh, look at this.
One. When I have Jordans, what are we talking about? No,
wait, so now we're talking about product placement on the show. Okay, all right, now we're going high end.
You, me, yoga poser, basketball. We're gonna have to. I'm gonna see. Sam's gonna do a slam dunk, and you're gonna be sorry that you ever questioned Sam's capacity to wear
listen,
those
I have
Jordans.
ups. Listen,
Yeah.
listen. I'm not a white man. You know what that means?
He's pink like
I
Floyd.
can jump. No, I can jump. That's what it means.
That's true.
I can jump. So, but gentlemen, listen, I just wanted to pop in. It's been a busy week. My
Dude.
producer's been sick all week.
Why?
But
Well, how inconsiderate? Jeez.
Listen, I couldn't even do my radio show yesterday. I have a radio show every single
the problem?
Saturday morning where I play cartoon themes. You used to sit there and wait for cartoons every Saturday morning. Well, the only place you can listen to cartoon themes on the radio is on my show. I do it every Saturday morning, except for yesterday. But I'll be
What
back.
brings us
I'll
to
be back tomorrow. I mean, I'll be back. What was it? Yes, Saturday. Saturday. Is when I'll be-
Saturday.
Saturday.
That's the
What
next
a
song
day.
we write. It's gonna be cool. It's gonna be all about that.
There it is.
Yeah.
Can
So,
we get Sam the newsman to appear on Normal World? Is the question. Or have
Now-
you appealed on?
Now, here's the thing. Now, I have to do a little bit of correction. Andreas, you said my name wrong again.
oh no, what'd I do? Sam Newsman, what'd I say?
You said Sam the Newsman.
That was me.
Oh,
Is your
I
middle
didn't
name
realize you were saying-
Andreas the Xirtus? Is it Andreas the
I thought it
Xirtus?
was-
I mean, it
sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. It
Sam
depends
Newsman.
on.
could be.
Sam newsman.
It could be, but Newsman just happens to be my last name.
That's fair.
Everybody always throws the in there. I'm not sure what that's all about.
I think I called you the puppet Sam Newsman. That's what I think in the song. But I think Yoga Poser did. We'll have to play the tape back and see. I hope I didn't call you Sam the Newsman.
Like
Did
Sam
you-
Bankman.
I did.
Sam the Bankman.
I apologize. I
Why
apologize,
do you
Mr.
think that I
Newsman.
will, other than sharing the screen with you in a suit, which is something that I probably won't do on Wednesday, like I said. 'cause
Name's
you'll
a
have
little
to-
on the nose.
But I wanted to make sure that I corrected the record.
Comrade Newsman. Yes.
Wait, what?
Mr. Who the heck knows what that Sam? I won't even say it out loud because then it's going to like exist as a thought form. So Sam Newsman is where you want to go, not anything that's close to a variation of that.
Whatever he said.
Because who knows
No,
what's there? It could
And
be-
well, I can understand why people would say the newsman, because
You are a newsman. You were a newsman.
not only am I a newsman, but gentlemen,
The-
I'm the most trusted puppet in media.
the
Reporting
most.
Roswell, Sam Newsman.
God, he's such a beautiful puppet, isn't he? He's a beautiful man. I wish we could all be more like Sam Newsman. Here.
So Elon Musk and Lex Friedman were talking, and they, Lex responded to something that Elon said about how we're made up of atoms, which are made up of quarks and leptons, which have like existed since the beginning of the universe, man. And Lex goes, yeah, the beginning of the universe. And so this idea that the Big Bang is one of the next big things to fall from, that mainstream's eventually going to have to let go of, and explain that it's a little more complicated than that. And you're right, the Big Bang theory is not necessarily the one and only orthodox opinion of what's possible as to the origin of our.
Well,
people are getting many Big Bangs, or the idea that it all had to come.
Someone asked about accelerationism, because I made the joke like, I'm kind of an accelerationist, and so I said, really, some people, if you ask them what that means, because he asked what accelerationism is, like they might say it's eschatology, this idea that we're headed towards the apocalypse. I don't see it that way. I see it more like we're going through the season. We're near the end of the season, and now the next season's coming, and seasons come and go. To everything turn, right? There is a season. So we have to start looking at the
particle accelerators in CERN, and the idea that it's worth marshaling all of those resources and expertise, other than as like a living university where people are getting trained in and trained out about electromagnetics, but you're going to do something that might rip a hole in the space-time continuum as like one, or it might produce a little squiggly line on a graph that we're supposed to believe is a boson. And it's like, I mean, to some extent, it's beautiful, but there are people that are starving as well, I hear.
Yeah. Right. I think trying to solve suffering is a really important problem for a lot of reasons. I think that needs to be the fundamental.
Like the United States supposedly, like we sabotaged the reactor by sending in someone with a little computer virus next to their thing so that it didn't go online. I get the feeling the same things happened with CERN, and that we're willing to accept whatever results they're going to put forward, simulate the results. But no, you're not really, whatever that thing is that we believe you that it might do so, like create, what was it again? And like, you want to recreate things that are close to the whole premise is the Big Bang. Right. We need to recreate the Big Bang. It's like, A, we don't know that even happened. And B, go ahead and just publish your results. We'll believe you. The squiggly lines on the graph, beautiful, amazing. You need 100 billion. You're not turning that thing on, whatever version of. You can test parts of it at a time.
They might.
No.
I like what Sam is saying, that Building 7 was probably biodegradable. And I think that makes more sense than we really weren't aware. I mean, because Enron, they were trying to corporate social responsibility. Don't laugh too hard. It makes sense. No, you're allowed to laugh. It's okay. Puppets, Sam.
See, the version of that joke I like is that Atlantis and the Tower of Babylon were controlled demolitions. No, I'm not. Yeah. I didn't say anything about 9/11 because people died.
Dude, there were 911 different cities that were in Atlantis. I don't know. We'll work on it. Puppet and news. There was another thought. Okay, because the eschatology coming near the end of singularity. What's interesting about the omega point, because of an alpha point, is that the omega point exists outside of time because material time is built around this energy. So energy is pervasive and immersive, and it's structured into material. Matter is energy slow enough to be seen. So anything that happens, by the time it happens, has already been integrated into the before point of the alpha point, because everything is eternal. So it accumulates, and I think this is the best term for this, evolution, right? Evolution is essentially, whoa, look at us now. Evolution is, switch this around too. Evolution is worship. It's this system where as time evolves on, everything it is absorbed and assimilated and integrated into the source, right? And since source is eternal, it's existed before the beginning, right? And so as we're approaching the omega point, singularity comes, quantum entanglement and singularity become more interesting and easier achieved near an omega point, near an apocalypse, near the end of what we call, the symmetry of the universe. So they're all of a sudden are, this is something we notice in Moore's law. Photons and electrons start to cross over when they're only one electron apart, right? Or one particle or one atom apart, essentially, is when. Yep. So this is, as we get to that level, things do entangle again. And so we're getting to that level, and we're seeing that. And I think as information is being more and more accumulated, we're reaching a point of total complexity of singularity where everything is becoming integrated again. We're witnessing it.
I can try to contribute to that ethos. Like I said, next time, there are kind of 3 or 4 sets of overlapping pattern images that exist either throughout time or throughout space in different ways that I'd like to bring to the table. And each time you bring on Stellium, he's going to have another version. He's picked his thing about, finding these massive fossil structures. And kind of effigy mounds and that sort of thing. And outside of just being here to bounce ideas off of and offer insight into the advancing social paradigm, because again, Neil deGrasse Tyson, man, what a fallen. I don't mind his personality, but he's not very scientific in his approach to thinking. And
actually, his personality kind of bugs me. Like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, that guy kind of weirds me out. Would not want to be like, I would not want to drink around that guy, probably. You know what I mean?
Well, he swings a big stick, and I'm sure as far as social passion, he has it, you know. And if you're at a party he invited you to, you got to let him suck up the air in his part of the room to some extent. And he's not going to let you knock him off his throne intellectually as some. His goal. Yeah, see, that's the thing is, as a representative of science, you're supposed to always entertain the, oh, well, I might be wrong. I need to look more into that. And he errs on the side of he literally came across in a recent podcast and he said, I don't believe things. When I talk about things, there are things that I know, and I'm going, hey,
well, I think he does say things he wants.
Philosophy.
He says things he wants to believe. So by saying that, I think he's saying that he's become more aware of the fact that what he thinks he believes isn't true. And that's what I'm noticing about him. Ooh. In his defense. He's starting to recognize that everything is empiricism, and empiricism is a distorted view of things. And it's really important. And it's only possible because of the transgender movement. And, you know, you've got, what was it, Daily Wire, the interview with... saying he's like asking all of these questions about transgenderism, and then
is it Knowles, Michael Knowles, maybe? Or
no. It's the main guy, and all of a sudden I'm forgetting. What's his name?
From the Daily Wire, I'll look it up.
The main guy, No, is that wrong? Not Daily Wire. No. I forget. Doesn't matter. He did an interview with somebody, and he was saying that it doesn't really matter anything about these arguments about transgender except for sports, right? Like, it's mainly sports. If it weren't for sports, would we care to have this conversation? And I think that was a really relevant point, that people only care because of its effect to them, and it doesn't affect them that much.
And you're representing science and trying to create certain consensus views that are safe to hold, that people can hold true over time. Of course, they want an astrophysicist to weigh in on biological issues, and at that point, that would be a time to graciously step aside and say that, look, that's not even my area of expertise. I don't want to comment on that sort of thing. I think that there are, the way that I learned about steroids and different types of hormones and stuff was by reading about what players got caught with over time and got tested positive for. And when one of your favorite players gets tested positive for HCG, when everyone's looking at HGH levels or testosterone, and what he pops for is something that is oftentimes given to pregnant women to start their hormone cycle.
And then you're like,
my guy popped positive. It's like, okay, one of my favorite childhood heroes. How am I supposed to feel about it other than educated, I guess?
And I just can't breathe. Pulls out your asthma inhaler, because steroids. Just saying.
There's corticosteroids, and then there's anabolic steroids. Now, anabolic steroids are the ones that just kind of build muscle mass, whereas the corticosteroids are a different type of hormone that the body uses for inflammation.
This is interesting to me too, because people talk about transgenderism, and there's a lot of these guys there are people that, guys who don't feel like boys who don't turn into men. They want to be these testosteronal men that look like that, right? And it doesn't happen, and so then you're able to take hormones that make you a woman that look. I mean, in a lot of circumstances, when they're showing you the ugliest people, they're not giving you their best, because there really are beautiful transgender people, because hormones, CRISPR, all that stuff.
And surgery,
even without surgery, if you start at a young enough age and you haven't developed into a testosterone-looking person, or even then, I've seen, it's crazy. So the thing is, you could do that with testosterone too, and they did. In the 80s and in the 70s, you had a lot of dudes that felt like they weren't adequate men, and then they took testosterone to become more masculine.
The idea of, if you're training for competition, as you were saying, the way it comes to light in our society are you violating the rules in the sports competition? Where in reality, it's about, does it improve the quality of life and of human existence to use these things, and what effect does it have on longevity? And those are kind of the two factors one perhaps could look at it, as opposed to from a punitive top-down, how do you stop it or identify it?
Well, if we're making
what
it
is
okay to people to change their hormone chemistry so that they can look like the other gender, why can't they do that to their own? Why is it that we frown upon people taking steroids to look more masculine if they're men, or take more estrogen if they're to be more feminine? Women do this actually when they hit menopause. Often they're taking estrogen supplement, so it's very strange. Testosterone seems like a controlled substance. It's really
it's about being attractive to the mate that you want to be attractive to some extent, or I don't know, as opposed to trying to fit some sort of centralized mainstream enough version of what is considered handsome or masculine or worthy of love. That's all we want, right? To be worthy of mom and dad's love, essentially, right? That's why anyone who's actually online now.
Maybe that might be, on like a fundamental Freudian level. I think a lot of what people are trying, if you're trying to contribute back to the world, you're
it's a lot more a dig on someone like me who comes at this from a spectator who's given a chance to appear on someone who's been in the game for quite some time and brings a lot to the table in terms of ability to produce and direct creative energy at certain projects that I hope that we can find things to work on in the future.
Oh man, it'd be great. Like once we get to posthumanism, we'll be able to take adenovirals that'll actually make our skin more like felt. And, I think that's going to be interesting because we could become more puppet-like. Because if you ever felt like you were just like a puppet in a man's body and you deserve to be who you are.
The whole imposter syndrome, having a frame of reference outside of that is interesting. Because again, I went from being an architect to being a yoga studio owner and then eventually a yoga teacher, but definitely I had no real public speaking experience. And then the idea that I could walk into a room and speak for 90 minutes without really much of a break, and there's no real need for anyone else to interject. It's in that it's like in a Bo Burnham-esque way. It's a disassociative process to some extent, but at the same time, in order to accomplish that type of extemporaneous speaking where you're actually making sense and stringing together thoughts a few ahead of the one that are coming out of your mouth, it takes being very present in the moment, in fact. So
based. Yeah, we're gonna it's gonna be great.
Indeed.
Well, I'm gonna end this pretty soon. You wanna plug anything?
I mean, next time I come on, I'll have something to plug, even if it's just a place. I have a Twitter feed. Stuff that really isn't much interest to anyone. It's just kind of posting ironic thoughts and poems. And
is it I Drop Bits or is it I Drop Bits or
could be incubated? Let me see. But I don't even know my own freaking Twitter handle.
Well, I know you had I Drop Bits.
Yes. Yeah.
But Stefan, Michael, Kalin, Incube. Yeah, I found you. Okay, here it is. We got a super chat from Brittany. Stellium does scientific research. You need to get caught up. I just added the snap. I don't know who that was for, but whoever was saying anything about Stellium,
could just come on and chew the fat, so to speak, and go over stuff. But
no, he's a vegetarian.
More to the today, I was just very disorganized and in a rush. I had to wash my hair. I had to brush my teeth because I didn't want the bad breath to be an issue during the stream.
It's true. Yeah.
And thank you again. The joke is for having me on for the first time, essentially.
Yeah, I appreciate having you on for the first time again. We should do this. We should have you on for the first time again next week if you have time. That would be cool. We'll get back on it. And then, so guys, make sure you look for Stefan Michael Kalin on x.com. Incub 8 ed. Incubated, right? Incubated. Get it, guys? I'm just zoom in. Zoom in on that there. UB8 ed, right? UB8 ed. UB8ed. There you go. And that's I Drop Bits, aka Patient Zero, aka the Queen of England.
My initials spell out schmuck, which is a part of my ethos.
Solidly based. I actually hadn't thought about that. Good job. Well done.
The Dennis Theory streak in me.
CRISPR, we're good on that CRISPR. I'll just pull. Where should we do a little bit more of that? A little bit more Box Saga. pretty good song, I gotta admit. I'll just let it do the chorus one more time. Help myself. Brittany says, watch his videos. Watch his videos. He said in his samples, he's like Mr. Science. So, oof. I don't know who I'm. Oh, Munch Fossil? Nah. Yeah, I like selling. Okay. Alright, guys. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for putting up with it. That's so meta.
Platforms forever thrice.
That's so meta.
So long as I'm in this Oval Office.